Emily just wanted a quiet life in her new home. Until Rick, the HOA president, called her a security hazard for being deaf. What he didn't know, her cousin Jake wired the entire property with hidden cameras. They caught him vandalizing, mocking her disability, and trying to evict her on tape. Now the footage is online, and the internet isn't playing by HOA rules. Before we deep dive into this interesting story, subscribe to our channel and tell us where are you watching from. Share in the comments below. When Emily told me she'd bought a house, I'll admit, I was nervous. Not because she couldn't handle it, she absolutely could. My cousin's one of the most capable people I know. She's been deaf since birth, but trust me, that's never slowed her down. She's fierce in her own way, calm, sharp-eyed, and whitely defiant. Still, moving into an HOA-controlled neighborhood in the suburbs, that's a different beast entirely. I took a few days off to help her settle in. It was early spring, trees just starting to bloom, the kind of neighborhood where driveways are power-washed and mailboxes are all regulation height. The kind of place where everyone waves, but not everyone smiles with their eyes. Her new house sat on a corner lot. Small front porch, blue shutters, a fenced yard for her service dog, Max. It was cozy, exactly what she wanted. Emily loved the light in the kitchen, the flower beds out front, the little reading nook by the bay window. It felt like a fresh start. But within the first 48 hours, I knew something was off. The man showed up while we were unloading the last boxes from the truck. He didn't introduce himself. Just stood on the sidewalk, arms crossed, watching us. Tall, gray hair combed back, mirrored sunglasses even though it was cloudy. Finally, he said, "No," announced. "You can't park like that." I looked up. "Sorry, it's a moving truck. We'll be done soon." "No exceptions," he said. HOA policy, blocking a fire lane. It wasn't. I checked the curb myself. Emily came out holding a small plant, her hair tied back, cheeks flushed from unpacking. She smiled and waved at him in her way, gentle sign language, a slight nod. That's when he narrowed his eyes and said louder this time, "You're not funny. What is that supposed to be?" I froze. Emily, unfazed, signed slowly again. She always gives people the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he didn't understand. Maybe he'd never met someone deaf before. He took a step closer. "Are you mocking me? Is this some kind of joke?" She tilted her head, confused. He snapped, "If you've got something to say, say it." I stepped between them. "She's deaf," I said firmly. "She's not mocking you. She's trying to communicate." He scoffed. "Right. That's convenient." Then this part burned. He started waving his hands in jerky, exaggerated motions. "Blah, blah, blah," he said, flailing. "Is that what we're doing here?" Emily just stared at him. No expression. Not anger, not fear. Just this wall of calm. She turned and walked inside. I stared at him, stunned. "You need to leave." "I am the HOA," he said, tapping a clipboard. "She better get used to the rules, or she won't last long here." He walked off like he'd just handled a criminal. I followed Emily inside. She was standing in the kitchen, hands on the counter, eyes closed. She signed slowly. "Is this how it's going to be?" I didn't know what to say, but in that moment, I decided something. If it was going to be a fight, we weren't going to fight fair. We were going to fight smart. And Rick Sanderson, he had no idea who he'd just messed with. We started keeping a paper trail. Every note, every fine, every rule he bent and twisted to his advantage. But nothing hit harder than what we found on her door one Sunday morning. It wasn't official, just a handwritten note shoved under the wreath. "Maybe this neighborhood isn't for people like you." Emily stood there for a long time, holding that note in both hands. I watched her eyes scan the words again and again, like maybe she'd misread it, like maybe it said something else. Then she folded it in half, slowly, and tossed it in the trash. She didn't cry. That would have been easier. She just stood at the sink, washing the same mug for 10 minutes while Max sat silently at her feet. That night, I opened my laptop and ordered the gear. A 1080p doorbell cam, 2 motion-triggered cameras for the fence line, 1 micro mic I tucked under the porch awning. I mounted it all while she was asleep. Discreet. Silent. When she woke up, I showed her the live feed. She raised an eyebrow. "Big brother," she signed. "No," I replied. "Little brother." She cracked a smile. First one in days. From that moment on, every time Rick or one of his clipboard minions stepped foot on her property, they were being recorded. Every glance. Every word. Every petty little abuse of power. Because here's the thing about guys like Rick Sanderson. They get real brave when they think no one's watching. And Emily. She'd spent her whole life being ignored, talked over, underestimated, but we were done being quiet. Now we were listening. I didn't expect much from the cameras. Honestly, I figured we'd catch Rick leaving more bogus notes or peeking into her windows. That alone would have been enough to prove harassment. But what we caught, it changed everything. It was a Wednesday night, just past midnight. Emily had gone to bed early, headphones on, watching a captioned movie on her tablet. I was crashing on her couch again, keeping watch. Something about the quiet felt wrong that night. Too still, no cars, no wind. Then, motion alert. I grabbed my phone and tapped into the feed. There he was, Rick. Hoodie up, gloves on, holding a spray paint can. He stepped right up to the side of her white fence, the one she had just had repainted, and started tagging it in big looping red circles. Then he stepped back, snapped a picture on his phone, and walked off. That smug bastard defaced her property just to fine her for it. I didn't wake her right away. I just sat there staring at the screen, my hand tightening into a fist. The next morning, sure enough, a violation notice appeared on her door. Graffiti on visible structure. Property must be cleaned or repainted within 72 hours. Fine, 100. I didn't say a word, just opened the footage on my laptop and hit play. Emily stood there beside me in her robe, watching Rick's face come into frame. Watching him do it. Her expression didn't change, but I could see the shift in her shoulders. Rigid, squared. She signed. He's doing this on purpose. Yeah, I said, and he's done it before. That's when I got curious. I posted a throwaway thread online in a private neighborhood forum. Nothing direct. Just, anyone else feel like the HOA's been a little aggressive lately? The DMs started rolling in. A man 2 streets down said he was fined for leaving a car parked in his own driveway for too long, even though it wasn't in violation of anything. A single mother on the east side of the block said she'd been called out for having unauthorized Halloween decorations. Plastic pumpkins. One elderly vet said Rick threatened him with legal action over a flagpole height violation. And then came the real twist. One woman, screen name Ruth Teahouse 57, sent me a short clip. Rick standing in front of her door saying loud and clear, "You people don't know how to follow rules. I'll fine you out of this neighborhood if I have to." Then she added, "He's sued 3 people here. 1 every time. Nobody wants to be next." That line stuck with me. 1 every time. Emily sat next to me as I went through everything. Photos, messages, blurry clips from doorbell cams. She signed, "He's done this for years." "Yep," I replied. "And he's got the whole place scared into silence." She looked at me for a long second, then signed, "But we're not scared." It was the first time I saw real fire in her expression. That night, we backed up every video, every message, every blurry clip to the cloud. We printed out violation notices, organized them by date, labeled every file. Then we watched one more clip. Rick on the sidewalk talking to a neighbor, laughing. The camera caught it just barely, the mic picking up the sound. "Oh, her. The mute tenant. Can't even complain, right?" Emily stared at the screen. No tears, no shaking hands. Just steel in her spine. And for the first time since she moved in, she signed something that made me realize this wasn't just about her anymore. Let's make sure he hears us. You don't have to hear hate to feel it. But it was one specific clip that changed everything. It happened on a Thursday morning. Emily was outside watering her garden beds. I was inside, making coffee when the motion alert pinged. I looked at the feed, and there he was again. Rick. He walked right up to her, waving a printed notice like it was a warrant. She didn't see him at first, so he shouted. She turned, startled, and began to sign something calm, polite, just asking what he needed. And that's when he snapped. "Why don't you speak English like everyone else?" he bellowed. The mic picked up everything, his voice sharp, cruel, echoing across the porch. He stepped toward her, jabbing the paper in her face. "This is America. You want to live here. Act like it." She froze. Not in fear, Just stunned. She held her hands still mid-sign, as if uncertain whether finishing the sentence was even worth it. He kept going. Sick of you playing dumb. You're not special. I burst through the front door before he could say anything else. Rick spun around like a deer in headlights. Get off the property, I said, low and direct. He smirked. This isn't over. You're right, I said. It's not. He left, still holding the notice he never actually delivered. Emily stood silently beside me. Then she signed, slow and sure. Did the camera get that? Oh yeah, I said. Crystal clear. That night, we edited it together. She added subtitles herself, line by line. At the end, she inserted a black screen with white text. This is what HOA leadership looks like. We didn't post it yet.
Not yet.
But we knew something Rick didn't. He thought we were just gathering evidence. We were building a trap. And it was almost ready to snap shut. It didn't take long before Rick figured out something was wrong. At least from his perspective. He wasn't being worshipped. He wasn't being feared. We weren't responding to his threats the way we used to. We weren't responding at all. Instead, we smiled when he passed by. We said thank you when he dropped off notices. Emily even waved at him once, just to twist the knife. She knew what we were doing. We were baiting him. And like clockwork, he took it. 3 days later, Emily got a certified letter from the HOA Board of Directors. Notice of special hearing. Petition for involuntary termination of residency. They were trying to evict her. On paper, the reason was a list of fabricated, obscure violations that made even the fake fines look amateur. Violation of community aesthetic uniformity due to her unauthorized lawn art, which turned out to be Max's water bowl. Repeated violations of noise policies, the same ones we already disproved. Failure to properly communicate with HOA officers, which Rick described in the petition as a deliberate obstacle to policy enforcement. But it was the final claim that made my blood run cold. Resident presents a potential security hazard due to unpredictable behavior and inability to comply with verbal directives. He didn't even try to hide it anymore. He was calling her dangerous because she was deaf. We were stunned. Not surprised, but stunned. There's a difference. Emily read the letter twice, sitting at the kitchen table. Then she folded it, placed it in a drawer, and calmly asked if I could charge all the cameras. We showed up at the board meeting dressed like we were on trial, because we were. It was held in the HOA's rented community center. Beige walls, dim lighting, folding chairs. The board sat in a neat little row at the front, like this was some kind of suburban inquisition. Rick stood at the podium, grinning like he already had the noose tied. Emily brought an ASL interpreter with her, a young woman named Sasha who volunteered through a local disability rights group. Rick took one look at her and scoffed. This isn't a courtroom, he muttered, loud enough for half the room to hear. We don't need theatrics. I started the audio recorder on my phone under the table. Cameras were already rolling in our jacket buttons. We had this locked down. Rick began with a rehearsed speech about preserving the integrity of the community, how some residents refuse to assimilate and how non-compliance puts stress on shared resources. Then he turned directly to Emily and said, "She doesn't respond to warnings. She doesn't answer her door. She refuses to talk to me. How can we manage this neighborhood when we've got someone playing silent protest?" Emily didn't flinch. She signed something to Sasha, who translated calmly. I respond through written communication and official notices. I follow every rule. I have all the receipts. Rick exploded. That's not good enough. The room went still. He turned to the board and shouted, "This is a liability. A communication barrier. What if there's an emergency? What if law enforcement needs to give her instructions and she can't hear?" Sasha signed that last part word for word. Emily blinked hard, like holding something back. Then she signed slowly, trembling slightly. "So being deaf makes me a risk?" Rick's eyes narrowed. "If you can't follow verbal commands, yes." And right there, in front of a half-dozen board members, 2 other residents, and a recording camera, he said it. On the record. He wasn't concerned with rules. He wasn't concerned with safety. He just didn't want someone different living in his neighborhood. Emily didn't say anything else. She lowered her hands and looked at the floor. A tear rolled down her cheek. She didn't sob. She didn't break down. She just sat in silence while Rick ranted on. And nobody on the board stopped him. When he was finally done, The president of the board, a man named Charles who hadn't looked at us once, cleared his throat. "We'll review the complaint and vote on the motion next week," he said, like it was nothing more than a zoning change. Rick smiled as he gathered his notes. His eyes found mine as we stood to leave. He thought he won. He had no idea the entire meeting was recorded. He had no idea we'd already lined up a lawyer. He had no idea this was the last time he'd ever shout unchecked in that room again. It didn't just spread, it detonated. Local news picked it up first. They showed the edited footage on the 6 o'clock broadcast, the split screen of Rick's face and Emily's silent thank you. Then came the national attention. CNN, NBC, even a shout-out on a late-night comedy show. Next up in Suburban Villains, this HOA president thought he was just enforcing the rules. Turns out he was enforcing ableism. The comments flooded in. As a deaf mom, this shattered me. How is this even legal? Someone get her a lawyer and get him a new job, preferably digging ditches. And then, the email. It came in through a contact form I'd almost forgotten we set up. Subject line: ADA legal support, no cost to you. The message was from a woman named Dana Whitaker, civil rights litigator, specializes in disability discrimination, based in D.C. but licensed federally. Her exact words: Rick Sanderson's actions may constitute a direct violation of Title III of the Americans with Disabilities Act and the Fair Housing Amendments Act. I'm prepared to represent Emily pro bono if she chooses to pursue a formal complaint. I read it twice before showing Emily. She stared at the screen for a long time. Then she signed. He broke the law. Yes, I said. And now he's going to find out what that really means. By morning, we'd officially retained Dana. She filed a cease and desist against Rick and the HOA board for continued harassment and discrimination. She also submitted a pre-complaint to HUD outlining the evidence of systemic bias. The next HOA meeting was supposed to be private. It wasn't. News vans parked outside the community center. Protesters held signs at the entrance. Access is not optional. We hear Emily. HOA harassment of Americans? We didn't say a word. Just walked through the crowd, heads high, cameras in tow. Rick wasn't smiling this time. He looked like a man realizing the fire he lit was about to swallow him whole. Inside, the board tried to quiet the crowd, citing procedural decorum. Dana stepped forward, professionally but forcefully, and handed them each a copy of the complaint draft. She spoke clearly, so even the people in the back could hear. Any vote to remove my client will be considered retaliatory and discriminatory, and will result in immediate federal action. Silence. Rick opened his mouth, but this time, no one was listening. Emily didn't need to raise her voice. The world was already doing that for her. When we filed the formal ADA complaint, we didn't whisper about it, we made it public. Dana, our attorney, made sure the filing was airtight. Documented harassment, multiple counts of targeted discrimination, and evidence of retaliatory HOA action. The request for an injunction went out the same day. The next board meeting was no longer a neighborhood affair. It was a spectacle. News crews returned. A local disability rights group set up a tent outside the HOA community center, passing out flyers about fair housing law. A group of high school students showed up holding signs that read, "Deafness is not a crime." Rick's rules nailed the law. But the most powerful statement of all walked into the room at exactly 6:00 p.m. Emily. She wore jeans, sneakers, and a plain black t-shirt. Across her chest in bold white letters, "Not a nuisance." The room fell into a hush as she passed through the crowd. Even the reporters paused. The only sound was the soft hum of camera shutters clicking. Rick was already seated at the head of the board table. His posture was stiffer than usual, lips pressed in a flat line. For the first time, he wasn't flanked by the usual chorus of yes men. The meeting opened with a standard agenda, but it didn't stay that way for long. One by one, residents began to stand and speak. A retired veteran, cane in hand, testified how Rick berated him for keeping his service flag up too long after Memorial Day. Said it made the neighborhood look politically messy. A single mother stood up and held out a photo of her front door, decorated with nothing more than a small wreath and a string of lights. "I was fined $150, she said. He called it visual clutter. A teenager, nervous but steady, spoke next. He followed me home 3 times. Took pictures of my garage door when it was slightly open. Said it violated HOA color policy. Emily didn't speak. She didn't need to. They were all speaking for her now. The cameras caught every testimony, every accusation, every quiet nod from the board members who had once looked the other way. Rick tried to object, at one point pounding the table and insisting the meeting return to decorum. Dana stood without missing a beat. "This is decorum," she said. "This is accountability." And just like that, the room turned. Neighbors who once feared fines or retaliation began clapping. The applause grew louder as each new voice joined in. It wasn't just Emily's fight anymore. It never had been. It just took someone refusing to stay silent to make everyone else realize it. By the end of the night, the board had no choice but to table Rick's vote to evict. Not because they wanted to, because if they didn't, there'd be legal fire raining down on all of them. Rick stood to leave, but this time he didn't walk out with power. He walked out in silence, followed by the slow, deliberate flash of camera lights. 2 more yeses. 6-1. It was done. Rick's mouth opened, then closed again. For the first time, he looked genuinely lost, like the walls had fallen and he had no idea how to rebuild them. Then Dana leaned in, her words quiet but deliberate. "You should know the 8A lawsuit is moving forward, and the city council has been briefed." His face went pale. "And just so you're aware," she added, "your real estate license. It's now under formal review. Multiple complaints pending. You might want to check your inbox." The cameras rolled, not from the boardroom, but from a dozen phones in the hands of residents, now empowered, now unafraid. Rick didn't storm out. He just walked away. No speech, no smug grin. Just the sound of his shoes on laminate tile as the man who ruled the neighborhood like a petty king stepped down for good. Outside, someone started clapping. Then more joined in. And Emily? She stood quietly, watching him go, hands folded in front of her, expression unreadable. She didn't smile. She didn't need to. We weren't finished. But the tide had turned. The next HOA election came quietly. No lawn drama, no flyers slipped under doors, no angry emails. Just a nomination sheet taped to the clubhouse wall. Emily's name was on it the next morning. She didn't ask for it. She didn't campaign. Her neighbors did it for her. The veteran with the flag. The mom with the wreath. The teenager with the garage door. People who for too long thought their voices didn't matter. Now they knew better. When the votes were counted, Emily won by a landslide. I still remember her face when they handed her the official binder, thick, outdated, full of red tape and contradictions. She held it like it weighed nothing. Her first motion, in her first board meeting as an elected HOA director, was simple and clear. Mandatory ADA training for all current and future HOA board members. Passed unanimously. She didn't gloat, didn't bring up Rick's name once. She just smiled, signed the motion, and passed the binder down the line. Outside that night, I asked how it felt, being on the other side of the table. She thought for a moment, then signed. "Feels like a beginning. The neighborhood feels different now. Not perfect, but quieter. More aware. People wave and mean it. Fines are rare. Rules make sense, and nobody's dog bowl gets called visual clutter anymore." Rick? Last we heard, he moved 3 towns over. His real estate license was suspended pending outcome of the ongoing investigation. He's off social media. Off the radar. But not off the record. Because the videos are still online. The views have slowed, sure, but the comments haven't. New people find it every day. They tag friends, share stories, ask how to fight back against their own neighborhood tyrants. And Emily? She's still editing, still uploading, still making sure people who feel small know they're not alone. Because Rick thought yelling louder made him right. But silent, recorded, captioned, and broadcast was louder than anything he ever screamed. If you've ever been told to stay quiet, this story was for you. If you've ever watched someone in power twist the rules, remember, cameras don't blink. Truth doesn't need a microphone. It just needs to be seen. Stick with us. We expose what they try to keep behind closed doors. Because in every HOA, there's a story they hope you never hear.